All right, for this, I've picked something unusual. I'm doing an object with you, an actual object, not just a straight up plain cylinder. We're doing a mug. We're doing a coffee cup mug, and it's not just any mug. As you can see, it's got some stripes to it. So we're starting off with the same kind of method that we've been working with, which is tick marks, getting the height and the width of that mug. And I want you to duplicate the height and width of the photo reference. I'd also like you to clip your photo reference to your board so you have it right near your workspace. Is you're usually going to see the top side of the cylinder, or in this case the mug, which is looking like an oval. You can see it right there, and that's what I'm trying to duplicate. So this oval, it actually has a fancy word associated with it. It's called an ellipse. So we're looking at this ellipse, this fancy oval on the top, and you can see that I've also slightly curved the bottom of the cylinder, kind of like a marshmallow or how a cork would look. It would be curved on the bottom, curved on the top, but with that ellipse, that oval. Just like with our last drawing, we are working with the vine charcoal first. And the reason for that is vine charcoal is soft, it's a light shade, and it erases off really well. Regardless, I'm still not pressing very hard. I'm trying to press light to get these tick marks and these measurements so that I can make corrections as I go. And I don't care how good of an artist you are, every artist makes adjustments. So even the best artists, if you watch them work, what they're doing is refining, correcting the entire drawing process time. Now, hopefully you make the big changes at this stage, right now. Still keep in mind what I've taught you about negative space, especially when you're looking at that handle. That's something that I looked at a lot when I was drawing that handle. I was looking at that negative space that's made in between the handle and the side of the mug itself. And I was also looking at the outside shape that's made there. That handle goes from thick to thin back to being thick. It's not the easiest handle to do, but I'm sure you guys can do it. Okay, so I worked off camera here to refine and try and get the shape of the mug correctly. There were some things that surprised me, like how close the bottom of the handle is to the bottom of the mug. So pay attention to that. So I do want you to have me take a look at your drawing at this stage, because it is really important that you get it accurate now before the shading. So like I said, this is a good time to make adjustments if necessary. It becomes much harder to make an adjustment later. So once you have that outline of the mug, outline of the tea or coffee inside, and maybe even the outline of the cat shadow, call me over. We'll take a look at it together. This background isn't as clear as our last photo reference, but we're going to put in that kind of diagonal line that cuts across there. Then you're going to go to the mug itself and put the stripes on. It's really important that those stripes wrap around the form. So another way of saying that is they're contour lines, because that's what that means. Contour means it's wrapping around the contour of the object itself. And in this case, it's a cylinder. The cylinder's bowing out around. It's a round object. You can also take your blending stump, which is what I'm going to show you here, and you can actually draw with the charcoal dust that's on your blending stump. It's a great way to get a soft line, and it's an easy line to erase up because it's not a lot of charcoal material. Still using the vine charcoal stick, we're going into the background. Now I don't want you to go as heavy on the background on this drawing as you did on the sphere, because obviously it's not that dark. You want to prioritize the values here and kind of squint your eyes. I usually blur my eyes a little bit if I'm having trouble telling, but to me, when I look at this picture, the darkest values are really on those stripes themselves on the mug. So the background is not as dark as the stripes. It's actually a pretty pale shade of gray, so mid-tone grays at most. It's important that you're shading lightly here and that you're shading evenly. There shouldn't be weird gaps. There shouldn't be shading in every single direction. Pick a direction to shade in and don't leave openings. Remember what we talked about with the cast shadow, that the cast shadow should be darkest near the object and then fade as it goes away. You want to keep that in mind here. And we're going to go into the background with a brush, just like we did before. So this value is about a value 4 or 5. I also noticed that there's a little bit of an ombre at the top right corner there, so I darkened that back up with the vine charcoal. And I also paled out the cast shadow a little bit because it's not that dark. And then I went in and I gave some tone to the stripes. This is with the vine charcoal. So we have not yet switched over to our charcoal pencils, but we will. And this part's actually really fun to blend. Just make sure you blend fairly evenly. There's also some shadow that's happening on the handle. I'm going to give just a little bit of tone to the tea or coffee, that beverage that's inside of the mug, but I've got to compare. I've got to do some value relationships here where I compare the color or the value that I see in the tea and accounting for the reflection too, and I compare it to the stripes. So right now it's not perfect, but I'm going to go in there with the charcoal pencils and darken things up. One of the things I really liked about this mug was the stripes. Now, it's a black and white photo, but in real life, the stripes were dark red, kind of a maroon color. So in this picture, though, they translate almost as though they were black. Not quite black, but pretty close. So we're going to go with like a value 8, but it's not going to stay 8 the entire band of that stripe. That's the thing about this. It's wrapping around a form, almost like you were taking a ribbon and wrapping it or tying it around a cylinder. So it's not going to stay the same. It's going to have an ombre on there. So it's darkest towards the handle, and then it's going to fade as it goes towards the middle, and then it might go back to being dark again. So it's going to start at like an 8. You can see I'm trying to work all 3 stripes at the same time. So I'm building those bands of ombre. And they follow a similar pattern because the light's the same on those bands. So darker on the left side, kind of fade as it goes to the right, but then it goes back to being dark. So it goes from an 8 to like a 7, 6, 5 even, and then back to like a 7 at the end. And that's not perfect. I'm going to go back and adjust it. I'm also trying to get a little bit of shading into that handle there. If you look at the rim of the cup, there's like a little white rim. So there's a white line that rides the edge there. So I'm taking the kneaded eraser and erasing that out. That's a method that's called subtraction. We'll talk about that a different time, but it's just pulling out material that you don't need to create a white area or light area. And you can see that's where you want to roll that kneaded eraser into a point so you can actually draw with it. And there's the rim of the cup happening. So now I get to go in, deal with the value relationship between the stripes and looking at the liquid that's in the cup. Now there is, like I said, there's some reflection going on there. So there's some miniature ombres happening. There's actually 2 of them, and then there's the reflected white of the mug in the actual liquid itself. So you kind of have to zoom in with your eyes, also kind of squint your eyes to get them out of focus to compare value to value. What we're doing is hard, but at least it's not boring, and you're applying it to an everyday object.